You could be the first to mention the Three Gorges project while discussing the well-known large-scale water conservation projects in China. Apparently, China has a proposal for a project called the Super Water Conservancy that is much more challenging than the Three Gorges project. The budget investment might be more than $4 trillion. If the project is successful, it will significantly reduce the issue of water scarcity in Western China and transform the endless desert into arable land. From its start, this mega-project idea has been often discussed, and India has even come out against it. What precisely is this initiative, then? Why hasn't it already begun? In addition, why does it enrage India? Water is one of the main obstacles to China's future development since the nation's 1.4 billion citizens and expanding businesses depend on it. Before we go on, subscribe to Chi News to watch about the most amazing world projects. Ready? Let's go on! China, while having one of the top 5 greatest freshwater resources per capita, suffers from severe water shortages that are made even worse by extremely unequal regional distribution and precipitation. While the south is vulnerable to devastating floods, the heavily populated north has chronic water shortages. China has started work on a massive engineering project to better distribute its water resources. The SSW to DOT South-North Water Diversion Project, expanding the biggest water transfer project in the world. Mao Zedong, who came to the conclusion that the South had plenty of water and the North somewhat less, originally put out the concept in 1952. If at all feasible, the North ought to take a little sand from the South, and WD accomplishes just that. It uses 3 routes, the Eastern, Middle, and Western, to move water from the South to the North. The westernmost and most contentious route is still under construction. Chinese President Xi Jinping declared in May 2021 that China will move on with the biggest water diversion project in the world. Plans for the western routes are divided into 2 groups: moderate government plans and ambitious academic suggestions. The Yangtze and Yellow rivers are connected by the western route, which is officially planned to drain 17 billion cubic meters of water annually, or almost 7 million Olympic-sized swimming pools, to Gansu and nearby provinces. Professor Wang Hull of Tsinghua University offered an additional idea from 2017 regarding the Red Flag River. It intends to send 60 billion cubic meters of water per year from transboundary rivers on the Qinghai Tibet Plateau, including the Salween, Maikan, and upstream portions of the Brahmaputra, to northwest China. As a result, Xinjiang would gain 133,333 square kilometers of agricultural land, while the Northwest would get a 150,000 square kilometer greenbelt. Yet, as a potential alternative to the western route, scholars and geographers have questioned its viability. 2015 saw the proposal of the Tian project by researchers from Qinghai and Qinghai universities, the largest weather modification and artificial rain-making system in the world. In order to produce 5 to 10 billion cubic meters of rain yearly above northern China, the 10-year initiative employs glacial ice cloud seeding. India has long been concerned about China's ambitions to divert the Brahmaputra, and it was mentioned in Shanghai's 13th five-year plan, fearing water shortages as a result. Yet this is a false impression. The Yangtze and Yellow rivers, not international rivers like the Brahmaputra, will be used as a source of water for the official western route. Furthermore, the central government is not taking these unofficial ideas very seriously. Let's see now. Why is India so concerned about China's unofficial plan, the Red Flag River project? Would India's interests actually be affected by it? In order to provide water supply capacity for the broad northwest area, the Horseshoe River project will primarily employ the Brahmaputra, Nujiang, and Lunsong rivers as its water sources. These rivers are rich in water and have a low water usage rate. After joining with other water sources, the project first draws water from the Brahmaputra's large bend. After roughly 60 kilometers, a tunnel must be dug to access the Lunsang River. The water is fed into the Brahmaputra by a variety of water works including tunnels, open channels, and reservoirs after traveling for around 43 kilometers where it joins into the Jinja River. From there, the water must travel for another 100 kilometers. After crossing across a few significant rivers, skip the whoosh sailing and head instead for the Hershey Corridor before ultimately cutting across the edge of the desert to reach the Hotan and Kashgar regions. Several people questioned whether this complicated, far-off Hanshu River project could indeed resolve the Northwest water consumption issue. After the Hanshu River project is completed, experts predict that the amount of water that can be transferred to the Yellow River annually may exceed 60 billion cubic meters. Almost half of the typical discharge for the whole Yellow River may be found in here. It can not only increase China's agricultural production while making use of the hundreds of millions of acres of farmland along the Yellow River that have been abandoned owing to a severe lack of water. As the project will eventually travel across the edge of the desert, it is crucial to support the economy along the Yellow River. It is possible that it will be able to solve the problem of soil erosion in the area and put a stop to the further spread of desertification in the region. The influx of water has the ability to transform the local climate and natural environment for the better for a very long period in the future. Even if only a little piece of the desert is transformed into an oasis, this may help the tourism business in the Northwest thrive. In point of fact, the notion of the project that came before this one makes it very plain how complicated the Hanshu River project is. The 6188 total kilometers of natural rivers that are included in the project can only have a tiny part, perhaps a few hundred kilometers, of their potential utilized. As a result, China is responsible for finishing the project's over 6,000 remaining kilometers. Since that time, the Hanshu River project has developed into one of the water conservancy projects that has the biggest amount of water diverted, as well as one of the projects that is the longest and most difficult to complete. Building operations also carry the danger of triggering natural catastrophes owing to the location's proximity to an earthquake zone, as well as the location's high height and steep descent. Scientists also find it tough to evaluate the stability of the water transfer volume for the Hanshu River project, despite the fact that the original prediction was for 60 billion cubic meters. But in fact, it turns out that it is extremely tough to attain this purpose after evaluating the water supply increase of those rivers one at a time. According to the figures, the ideal yearly water transfer volume can only be achieved by transferring a total of 44 billion cubic meters of water, which is around 70% of the initial plan. Because the architecture of the project calls for some rivers to flow into India and other countries, there are some diplomatic challenges that I will be unable to ignore. India consequently pays great attention to developments in the higher reaches whenever China has objectives in that sector. Exaggerated remarks issued by the Indian media would fool the Indian people and rapidly exacerbate the imbalance between the two nations. In point of fact, China has provided clarifications on several occasions. As an example, you may use the Brahmaputra River. China's technological advancements won't be able to reduce their discharge, despite the fact that they are at the higher reaches. It is possible that it may be beneficial in reducing the floods that occur in the northeastern area of India. As a result, they have absolutely no need to be concerned. As a direct consequence of these problems, China has refrained from rushing into any construction endeavors. We can only keep our fingers crossed that the engineering team will be able to fix each problem one at a time and promptly give adequate water to the Northwest region. What will the nation do if the population grows and there is nowhere for them to live? Everyone has the right to call a developed city home, but as cities grow, it becomes more difficult for individuals to get basic essentials. Ultimately, life becomes more difficult and costs of living rise, including rent for apartments and transport expenses. Even while it appears like China is in an impasse, that is not the case. How? In today's video, we're going to learn more about it. In this video, we'll talk about China's most cutting-edge building initiative, which will almost certainly end the country's population issue. We will also go into great detail regarding the initiative and how it would help China. Before we go on, subscribe to China News to watch about the most amazing world projects. Ready? Let's go on. With a staggering 1.4 billion people, China has 687 cities. More than 1 million people were housed in the majority of the cities, and practically all of these communities offer their residents the greatest and most advanced living circumstances. They provide amenities for residents as well as entrepreneurs with chances. The economy of China as a whole is significantly influenced by these cities. Yet this is the issue. China's population is constantly growing. The majority of individuals desire to reside in the most developed cities and provide their children the greatest possible living. As a result, the majority of families opt to relocate to impressively developed cities, much to how Beijing, the capital of China, was chosen. With nearly 21 million residents, the lack of housing became the primary problem. Therefore, it was hard to locate a space for less than $17,000 per square meter in 2021. But individuals continue to spend a lot of money on flats. It demonstrates that people have no choice but to reside in large places and spend a lot of money. China's GDP will suffer if many people are housed in a single city. For instance, excessive traffic last year limited the amount of time that vehicles could spend on the road, costing China's GDP $11 billion. China must thus resolve this problem to alleviate villagers' suffering. Where can these folks go, though, is the real question. They are unable to reside in developing rural regions. How can some people in China live in less developed rural areas if all the cities are futuristic? This is now an issue for China, which must be resolved immediately. Yet, if you believe that the only option for accommodating people is to let them live in rural regions, then you are mistaken. China always has plans, and this time it came up with a solution that will provide the country's citizens a better place to live while simultaneously giving the economy a huge boost. This problem's answer struck me as a brilliant one. What if a metropolis were to emerge in rural China, much as Beijing did? We are aware that it is difficult to develop all of the rural areas at once. But what if China manages to build only one modern metropolis in these remote areas? Prior to China getting started on it, this seemed like a ridiculous concept. With the goal of providing Beijing's non-essential operations with a new home, a plan for this new metropolis was put into action. It will be a major relief for Beijing, a large metropolis. A new economic center will be created as the strain is reduced. She presented her concept to the locals on February 10, 2015. He claimed that Hebei would soon have a new metropolis built. In April 2017, the Chinese government formally revealed the project and the city's name, Xiamen. The largest freshwater lake in North China will be close to the city. It will cover about 38 square kilometers in its initial phase. Just after the completion, the majority of the corporate, educational, and financial sectors will transition to show business. The second phase will then create a region measuring 198 square kilometers. The primary downtown area for Xiamen will be in this location. Here, a large number of structures will be built, including stores, parks, and hotels. This phase will also include the creation of the transportation sectors, such as train and bus terminals. The second phase will thereafter be the center of the city cluster zones. Following the creation of these zones, a 1,000 square kilometer region will be created surrounding the entire city to offer room for lakes, woods, and farmland. The settlements that presently exist in the vicinity of this 1,000 square kilometer area will be upgraded and connected to one another. In addition, after this project is finished, the volume of air that has been consumed in this person will reach its maximum. All of the information will be stored in an online database, and AI will control the flow of traffic. There will be operations for both the self-driving taxis and regular taxis. Since they will assist China in modernizing, these conveniences are being provided free of charge. In addition to this, it will make Xiamen a brand new economic and technical center. The high-technology industry will attract a large number of new technology enterprises, and ideally, many startups will get off the ground. The high-tech industry will provide 75% of the city's total economy, but that's not all it will do. Youngsters will also be considered to be mini vertical forums that begin with amazing technology and feed the metropolis with fresh food on a widespread basis. The establishment of a number of smaller parks will contribute to the overall prettiness and greenness of the city. The villagers of the neighboring towns and villages will become more appealing to young people after they have been modernized. The children's region will be covered in green for 70% of the map. In addition, given that the mode of transportation in question would be electric, its impact on the environment would be negligible at best. In addition to the operation of minor wind and solar power systems, the majority of the electricity will be provided by geothermal power plants. At the completion of the building, it is expected that the children would be among China's most livable cities. The city will have rail connections to other major cities in the region. A number of railroads will be constructed, which will allow Xiamen to become connected to major cities like Beijing. The total cost of this project to China will be $580 billion. In the region that will eventually become the city, there are currently more than 60 communities and 1 million people making their homes there. In December of 2017, the construction process got underway. By the year 2021, around 85% of the metropolis had been completed. The question that has to be answered today is how China as a whole will benefit from the establishment of this new metropolis. To begin, the city is large enough to accommodate various businesses that, in other major cities, would not have had enough capacity to survive. Also, it will propel technological development and creative endeavors forward. Because of the newly added train links, China's railroads will also get a better reputation among international travelers. The gross domestic product, GDP, of humanity is expected to reach close to $298 billion. The children will serve as a model for other endeavors of a similar nature. As a result of the competition, China will also acquire experience in developing livable, modern settlements in otherwise inaccessible locations. Construction is another area that will see a significant increase in the number of available jobs for local residents. The Chinese economy and the people of China will unquestionably see positive effects as a direct result of this move. In addition, there is not the slightest bit of doubt that this will be a major step forward. Do you believe cities can be built in rural regions in other countries? Or is it only China that is enabling a ridiculous yet brilliant idea? Although the project is challenging to construct, Chinese engineers are eager to take on this new challenge. The cost of labor in China has increased over the last few years. Certain Chinese industrial cities have seen an economic downturn as a result of this. Investors have sequentially relocated their industries to Vietnam in an effort to prevent losses. The economy of Vietnam is expanding quickly, whereas industrial areas in China's Guangdong region are seeing steadily declining economic output. We learned that China is investing $1.4 billion to construct 2 giant bridges over the sea in an effort to resolve this conundrum. Vietnam should be shocked by this. Before we go on, subscribe to Cha News to watch about the most amazing world projects. Ready? Let's go on. Guangdong is a coastal province in China. While the coastline of Guangdong province is not particularly large, it is incredibly long, 1,595 kilometers, or the distance between Charlotte and Augusta, USA. Second, it is challenging to travel between Guangdong province's cities due to the abundance of bays in its coastal regions. The bay prevents inhabitants on both sides of the water from communicating with one another. For instance, if people wish to go more than 30 kilometers, they must make a detour of more than 300 kilometers around the Taiwan Strait. That will take 12 hours as well. The growth of Guangdong province has been hampered by difficult transportation and investor migration. The Chinese government realized after several discussions that the building of a cross bridge is of great significance to urban development in order to not fall behind the rest of the world in terms of its own development. This is because it can both speed up the region's economic growth and support social development. In order to develop the Longmen Bridge and Thyssen Port Cross Bridge, the province planned to invest $900 million. The Longmen Bridge is not only the first kilometer Class C crossing suspension bridge in Guangdong province, but also the longest sea crossing bridge in Gansu province. Longmen Bridge is estimated to have cost $800 million in total. It begins in the Chinese city of Qinzhou. Its terminus is in the vicinity of the Qinzhou port across the Mouth Sea. 2 174-meter-tall main towers are also part of the bridge. The path of the bridge is around 7.7 kilometers long overall, with the bridge itself being over 6,600 meters. Also, the Long Manai Bridge's main canal has a unique design that can accommodate 20,000-ton cruise ships' navigational needs. As a result, China now has a second channel that can accommodate the navigable paths of substantial cruise ships. The Titan Port Sea Crossing Bridge, which connects China's Guangdong and Guangxi regions, is another sea crossing bridge. After the new bridge on the right side is finished, the traffic can be redirected by asking for information. The sea crossing bridge is being enlarged on the right side of an existing bridge. We discovered that the bridge's primary path is around 7 kilometers long, with the bridge itself being about 6.6 kilometers long. The project's entire investment is $600 million, and the approach road is around 0.5 kilometers long. These two sea crossing bridges may seem unremarkable to you. Why, therefore, did it surprise Vietnam? Vietnam has improved infrastructure building in recent years in an effort to catch up to China. Yet, building a lot of infrastructure costs a lot of money. Vietnam's economy is still expanding, therefore raising money for any infrastructure project takes a long time. China, which has the second largest economy in the world. The remaining monies necessary for infrastructure development are all direct appropriations, provided the project in question does not involve a large-scale undertaking costing hundreds of billions of dollars. Second, whereas China's infrastructure is quite strong, Vietnam's infrastructure is relatively weak, and many infrastructure projects there rely on foreign help. For instance, China just needs 4 years to finish the Longmen Bridge, a project that is built across water. It is clear that China's superior infrastructural technology and powerful financial resources astounded Vietnam. As was already noted, investors started to relocate to Vietnam as a result of rising salaries, which had a negative impact on Guangdong Province's economy. How then did these two cross-sea bridges preserve Guangdong Province's economy? The construction of the cross bridge will, first and foremost, improve the traffic condition in Guangxi Province. According to our research, motorbikes are the most practical form of transportation in China's Guangdong region. Motorcycles, however, make it difficult for locals to move far. The easiest way for individuals to go to another city is via plane. Flying, however, is a burden for visitors because they must pass through several transfer points. On the road, it takes a long time. In addition, airfare in China is typically highly costly. Nonetheless, the distance between the two locations will be reduced by more than 20 kilometers if the crossing bridge is completed. Residents will reduce the initial 90 minutes to 25 minutes by traveling from China Airport to the event district. Also, the construction of the crossing bridge has made it possible for the Pearl River Delta in Guangdong to be completely connected to the southwest area of China. This implies that the province of Guangdong will establish connection with these developers. Cities in China and the two locations may intensify their interactions and collaboration and work together to further the conversion of resource advantages. For instance, the Yangtze River Delta area of China's economy started to grow quickly with the opening of the Hangzhou Bay Bridge in 2008. In terms of urban development, the South Bank's average annual GDP growth surpassed 15%, transforming it from a tidal flat to a gold coast with industries worth hundreds of billions of dollars. It is extremely important that these two sea crossing bridges are built. He established communication between the majority of the province of Guangdong cities, further solidifying their economic links. Information technology, businesses, and goods move freely throughout the area, promoting urban economic integration. These factors then progressively spread to neighboring cities, accelerating the modernization of each city and ultimately promoting balanced regional growth. Using the tourist sector as an illustration, travel buses have gained popularity since the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge opened to traffic over the sea. During the holidays, vacationers from all over the world drive between Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau. As a result, the tourism service sector on both sides of the Taiwan Strait has ushered in new growth prospects, driving the prosperity of the catering and hotel industries. Most significantly, the cross bridge has reduced the travel time by land between the Guangxi coastal cities and the Pearl River Delta. It has encouraged the swift growth of logistics, trade, and transportation in southwest China and the Guangdong Pearl River Delta. For instance, a 1-hour living circle was established in China's Greater Bay Area after the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau cross was put into operation in 2018. In addition to saving 80% on transportation expenses, Zhuhai's yearly show generated a record $2 billion, or more than 5% of the nation's GDP. Recent years have seen a marked improvement in the regional economy. In a crucial province, China has been encouraging industrial structural changes. It is unfortunate that there has been no change in the percentage of secondary industry in Guangdong Province's industrial structure. In the majority of a province's cities, the percentage of industry is more than 40%. More than the national average, the percentage of tertiary industry is more than 10% lower than that of the Pearl River Delta. Also, the economic system is flawed. China's Guangdong and Guangxi provinces, along with other economic zones, will be combined to create a vast business network after the construction of these two sea crossing bridges. Guangdong Province may then more easily conduct business with East Asian markets including Russia, North Korea, South Korea, and Japan by relying on the well-connected local economy. By doing this, the degree of opening up to the outside world may be increased, and the industrial structure's upgrading and optimization can be encouraged. Last but not least, I'd want to know what my friends think of these two Chinese crossings. Tomorrow's incident will occur. Which will show up first is always a mystery. On February 6, Turkey endured the greatest earthquake in history, and this calamity inflicted significant damages to Turkey. Turkey has started a post-disaster rehabilitation plan in an effort to quickly revive the economy. Turkey now has a budget of $45 billion, and it anticipates finishing the housing rebuilding within a year. International bids would be accepted for the restoration project, and nations including China, the United States, and South Korea swiftly entered the post-quake reconstruction competition. Given how strong China's infrastructure is, will Turkey choose it? What advantages do nations have in the race to complete the reconstruction project? Keep watching. Before we go on, subscribe to Cha News to watch about the most amazing world projects. Ready? Let's go on. Based on the statistics that have been released, we are aware that millions of people were left homeless as a result of the massive earthquake, which resulted in up to 47,000 fatalities in Turkey and the destruction of hundreds of thousands of structures. Before starting the rehabilitation phase, Turkey must clean up the ruins. Statistics show that the damages from the destroyed buildings in this earthquake, along with the remaining local economic losses, reached up to $25 billion. The earthquake cost Turkey an estimated $84.1 billion in economic damages. In the reconstruction phase following a calamity, as many as 130,000 homes need to be rebuilt in Turkey. Also, Turkey must finish rebuilding its infrastructure, including its roads, water supply, electricity supply, and sewage treatment. These facilities require a startling amount of 843 billion Turkish liras, which is comparable to nearly 45 billion US dollars. Recent years have been difficult for Turkey due to a number of factors, including high inflation and a weakening currency. Individuals have a lot of questions on this topic. How did Turkey go about raising money for the restoration efforts following the earthquake? The World Bank provided support to the tune of $1.78 billion to Turkey. In addition, a number of countries from all over the world have sent financial aid to Turkey for the purpose of earthquake relief and post-disaster reconstruction. Yet, the financial needs for the reconstruction of Turkey's infrastructure are not met by these donations. In addition to searching for additional finance and investments, the Turkish government is required to issue long-term debt as part of the post-earthquake reconstruction efforts. Despite the fact that it is a very challenging process, the reconstruction work that needs to be done in the wake of a disaster needs to be underway as soon as feasible. After all, millions of individuals are still in the process of awaiting the completion of their new homes. As Turkey began its endeavor to rebuild, the United States, South Korea, and a number of other nations reacted quickly to ensure that they could remain competitive with China. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of these nations? The United States has the greatest economy in the world, hence its economic strength is by default quite powerful. While Turkey has a sophisticated economy, it may also turn to the United States for assistance when its resources are low. In a humanist manner, the United States might lend money to Turkey, possibly even at no interest. Also, the United States has very good infrastructure. For instance, the Brooklyn Bridge, the most challenging undertaking in modern history, and the Golden Gate Bridge, the world's longest and tallest suspension bridge, were both constructed by the United States. More significantly, the development of roads, ports, airports, and trains in the United States began very early. Beginning quickly means gaining more experience than competitors, and the US has enough testing funding. As a result, the United States will always have special knowledge of certain infrastructure. Moreover, American infrastructure corresponds to American culture. For instance, the infrastructure of America has progressively taken on the traits of the motor culture that emerged from roads. Turkey will be able to experience unusual native architecture if the United States takes on the post-disaster rehabilitation project. Choosing to cooperate with the United States does come with certain consequences, though. Syria, on the other side of the earthquake, was also severely impacted, in addition to Turkey, where the majority of the structures were destroyed. Nonetheless, as a global power following the earthquake, the United States, in addition to failing to help Syria in any way, it made matters worse when a calamity struck the country. For instance, the ongoing imposition of unilateral sanctions and a blockade on Syria has led to a fall in the standard of living and inadequate preparedness for disasters. After the catastrophe, the United States not only refused to offer assistance to Syria, but also made it more difficult for Syria to conduct rescue operations. Although Turkey and the United States have a strong alliance, Turkey must also be wary of long-standing U.S. predictions and prevent the U.S. from acting similarly to Syria as the nation with the world's most powerful infrastructure. It should come as no surprise that China's physical infrastructure is of a high standard. For example, the massive nuclear coal-fired power plant that was developed with support from the Chinese government in Turkey has continued to operate without any problems despite a number of major earthquakes, and it has established itself as the backbone of the system. The building business in China is not only swift and of great quality, but it is also still very inexpensive despite its speed and reputation for excellence. The fact that China is a welcoming nation is of critical importance. After the earthquake that struck Syria and Turkey, China promptly sent an offer of assistance to Turkey. Also, during the past several years, China and Turkey have been working together on numerous projects, and their friendship has grown deeper. Even if China is chosen as the location for post-disaster reconstruction efforts, there would be many obstacles to overcome. So, what are some of China's shortcomings? Turkey is located in a seismically active zone, and the country frequently experiences earthquakes. Thus, Turkey's infrastructure has to have a very high resistance to earthquakes. Although China's infrastructure is extremely durable, the country's buildings are not particularly resistant to earthquakes. Even while the new nuclear coal-fired power station has survived many earthquakes, this does not necessarily mean that China's ability to withstand earthquakes has improved to the point where it is on par with the finest in the world. However, the building expenses in China for structures that have a significant earthquake resistance would be extremely expensive, which would make Turkey's already difficult option even more difficult to make given the country's poor economic situation. Despite the fact that South Korea's infrastructure is not on par with that of other developed countries, the country's spending on infrastructure on a per capita basis is among the highest in the world. It is essential to carefully plan investments in infrastructure on a per-person basis in countries that have limited land resources. We are all aware that Turkey has a very tiny area in comparison to the number of people living there. Planning must be done about both the location of the facility and the distribution of the workers in order to comply with the rules. South Korea possesses a formidable level of strength in this domain. There are still many obstacles to overcome after making the choice to do post-disaster rehabilitation in South Korea. Where exactly does this appear? Shipbuilding is without a doubt South Korea's most well-known industry, and we are all aware of this fact. Ships that originate in South Korea are in very high demand all around the world. The reliability of South Korea's infrastructure, on the other hand, is questionable due to the fact that a number of incidents have taken place within Korean buildings. In addition, people are left with a bad view of persons as a result of Korean architecture, which contrasts adversely with the architecture of Turkey. Even though we do not yet know who Turkey will ultimately pick, the cost of building in South Korea will be rather high. This is despite the fact that we do not yet know who will win. We have high hopes that Turkey will avoid making a rash choice and will get out of the course of the earthquake as fast as they can. The majority of the Arctic region's resources are not currently being used by people. In order to better understand the Arctic region, several nations have continued to have a keen interest in it and have sent numerous scientific research trips there. Also, a deal for the use of an island has been inked with China. The Little Barrier Islands are located more than 7,300 kilometers from China. There are 62,000 square kilometers of islands in the total archipelago. How crucial is this island to China then? What relevance does it have in terms of strategy? Keep watching. Before we go on, subscribe to Cha News to watch about the most amazing world projects. Ready? Let's go on. The majority of the Little Bar Islands are made up of 4 sizable islands, including Spitz, Bergen, Northeast, Agi, and Barents, where glaciers cover more than 60% of the surface. The majority of the time on the island is either polar day or polar night because the archipelago is situated within the Arctic Circle. The climate of the archipelago is around 20 degrees Celsius warmer than that of other Arctic locations. Nevertheless, as a result of the effect of the North Atlantic warm current, the majority of the islands in the archipelago are now uninhabited, and it is the closest inhabited region to the Arctic. This archipelago has abundant reserves of coal, iron ore, oil, and natural gas that date back to the 12th century, according to a study of scientists. Norwegian sailors were the ones who initially found the little bar, but due to the extreme cold and remoteness of the area, hardly any people are ready to make this their permanent home. Yet, European nations like the Netherlands and the United Kingdom came here to fish up to the start of the 20th century because of the excellent fisheries resources of this island in the 17th century. As a result of the discovery of mineral resources like coal, numerous European nations started vying for this land up to the end of World War I. The Svalbard Treaty was signed by several nations in order to develop the islands peacefully, as stipulated in the treaty. Norway is the rightful owner of the Svalbard Islands' sovereignty. Moreover, a total of 18 nations, including the United Kingdom, the United States, China, and other nations, are permitted to utilize Svalbards. Hence, as one of the signatory nations, China. In this archipelago, everyone who complies with Norwegian legislation is allowed to travel without restriction. Since the Svalbard Treaty was signed, more than 50 nations and regions have visited the archipelago. China has steadily been more interested in using the Svalbard Islands in recent years since the archipelago is rich in minerals, oil, and natural gas, and China's industrial sector requires a significant quantity of inexpensive imported energy sources. Energy sources like this are crucial to China's development. Since China continues to work with international enterprises in joint mining, it is only inevitable that China will invest in the archipelago. For the more than 3,000 inhabitants of the archipelago, China, Norway, and Russia have all reaped considerable rewards. The island's economy is based mostly on mining, but as this sector has grown, the world has come to understand how crucial environmental preservation is in this archipelago. Given that China is the most populous and fastest-growing developing nation in the Northern Hemisphere, the implications of climate change in the Arctic region on China are of the utmost significance. As a consequence of this, the scientific investigation that China is conducting in the Arctic region is essential to the future of the country. The Chinese government has slowly started conducting scientific research and inspections in the Arctic. The Svalbard Islands are home to a population, and they are one of the populated areas that are located closest to the Arctic. In addition to beginning investments in the teeny-tiny Bar Islands, China has established Yellow River Station, which serves as China's Arctic Scientific Research Station. It is possible that the Chinese expedition crew may stop here, in this isolated spot, to resupply and take some time off. The Chinese expedition crew is able to concentrate on the scientific duties of the Arctic voyage since they are not being interrupted by the outside world. The utilization of the Little Bar Islands by China is analogous to the construction of an Arctic space station by China somewhere in the Arctic. Longer-term Arctic research projects may be carried out by the Chinese expedition team, which will benefit the advancement of Chinese scientific research. Most of the time, the northern lights may be clearly seen on the islands since the archipelago is always in a condition of polar day or night. Via the investigation of the northern lights phenomena, the Chinese expedition team conducted 12 scientific studies on the northern lights phenomenon in the Tiny Bar Islands. Chinese researchers are exploring using the strong current produced by the northern lights and have a rudimentary knowledge of the collisions between sun electrons and atmospheric atoms. Today's scientific community is still focused on finding ways to utilize the aurora's energy more effectively. In order to fully use the archipelago, the Northern Lights phenomena has also improved this island's tourism infrastructure. China and Norway are now contributing financially to the island's tourism industry. The mining industry on China's islands might be replaced with the tourist industry as part of an effort to improve the state of the archipelago's ecology, as well as to forestall food shortages that could be triggered by changes in the local environment. China, Norway, and a number of other countries participated in the establishment of a seed bank for plants that is now known as the Svalbard Global Seed Bank. Because of the expenditure of $3 million in this program, more than 4.5 million plant seeds of human crops have been preserved at this location. At this same moment in time, the Svalbard Global Seed Bank is the plant seed bank that has the title of being the largest in the entire globe. In the tundra of the Svalbard Islands, which are located in the Arctic Ocean and have a polar marine environment, engineers established the seed bank under the bottom of rocky caves. The thickness of walls constructed out of concrete is 1 meter. Because of this, the interior of the seed bank could be able to keep a low temperature without requiring any more energy. In addition, the entry to the seed vault features a robust bulletproof door and 2 air valves as part of its comprehensive security system. Even if Greenland's glaciers melt in the future, the seed bank can still be stored at a low temperature to preserve its contents. These plant seeds ensure a diverse range of human harvests, which is critical to the continuation of human development. The Svalbard Islands are the only area in the Arctic that has been designated as both a free economic zone and a demilitarized zone, as stipulated by the Svalbard Treaty. No military presence has been established by any nation on the Little Barrier Islands. Yet, if there were to be a third global war, I have no doubt that China would also deploy some of its military personnel to the Svalbard Islands in order to fulfill its responsibility to protect its people. Hence, when the fight breaks out, I believe that other nations would follow China's lead as the leader in the conflict. Also, the states that make up NATO were not very distant from this archipelago, so the potential military value that the island may hold for China is of comparable importance. The weather and environment in the region, known as the Arctic, have a large and ongoing effect on the rest of the world. The nations of the globe are focusing a lot of attention on keeping track of the latest happenings in the Arctic area. China is unable to disregard the significance of the small barrier islands because of their role as the international boundary for Arctic research. China is going to come up with a practical plan for the archipelago's future growth and figure out a way to make good use of the smaller barrier islands as they are developed. At the same time, China is working along with the rest of the world to preserve the natural ecology that is found on the tiny barrier islands. Humans have consumed a significant quantity of traditional fossil fuel energy during the last 200 years. Yet a significant issue has resulted from this. Many air pollutants have been generated as a result of the combustion of fossil fuels, adversely contaminating human habitat. Countries all around the world are continuously seeking for innovative methods to use energy to address this issue. The remarkable new technology, which is a rare one that can use air to create power for the mature use of this technology, was formally unveiled by China in 2022. China has been doing excellent research for about 18 years. China's energy utilization has altered as a result of this technology. Compressed air energy storage and power generation comprise this revolutionary technology. This is the procedure. The electric energy compressor is used to compress the air into a gas storage well when the power system is experiencing a low period, and the extra electric energy is transformed into air energy. This technique may also be used in other restricted areas, such as storage tanks, abandoned mines, tunnels, submarines, and caves. When the power system requires energy, the air that has been held is released, creating a high pressure that drives a steam turbine to produce electricity. Similar to utilizing a steam engine to power a generator to produce electricity, compressed air energy storage functions similarly. Although compressed air energy storage is a fairly straightforward operating principle, it took China 18 years to continuously and completely enhance it. China has suggested a strategy to attain the carbon peak of carbon dioxide emissions in 2035 and to achieve carbon neutrality in 2060 in response to the Paris Agreement's development goals. China will thus spend $760 million in the development of subterranean compressed air energy storage power plants in 2020 after this innovative technology has reached its maturity. What use does this air energy storage power plant serve then? This subterranean compressed air energy storage device was built after more than 2 years of work. The 300-megawatt air energy storage power plant is the first of its kind in the world. It will also grow to be the biggest compressed air energy storage power station in the world at that time. The subterranean air energy storage power station's potential yearly power output is 500 million kilowatt-hours, according to engineers. 60,000 kilowatt-hours are generated on average every hour, and 60,000 people might utilize that much electricity for one day in the future after 5 hours of nonstop production. This air energy storage power station will offer electricity to 180,000 homes. It would take 49,800 tons of fossil fuel to produce such a large amount of electric energy using the conventional thermal power generation method. The power production efficiency of an air power station has achieved 70% in the field of compressed air energy storage power generation. As a result, it now has the greatest standalone power of any air power station in the world. New challenges have evolved in the use of renewable energy sources, such as wind and solar power, as their growth continues. When there is a decrease in the amount of power used, the manner of wind power generating is likely to create extra electricity. As a result, when the weather is severe, the load on the power grid increases and the additional electricity cannot be used. Solar power generation has a very low efficiency, which leads to an inadequate supply of electricity. Nevertheless, the power generation cycle of the air energy storage power station may be modified constantly, with variations in electricity demand compared with wind power and solar power. The grid can operate more safely when air energy storage power plants are used. More crucially, since air is compressed during the process of producing electricity from compressed air energy storage, traditional fossil fuels are no longer required for burning. The air will produce a significant amount of heat energy, and the steam turbine may effectively be driven by the air's high pressure and temperature. No fossil fuels are used during this procedure. As a result, compressed air energy storage power generation won't pollute the climate through emissions. Compressed air energy storage power plants also have significant benefits in terms of cost, complexity, and construction. Typically, it costs $1 to $1.5 billion to build a hydroelectric power plant with an installed capacity of 2 million kilowatts. Construction of an air energy storage power station of the same size only cost between $600 million and $900 million due to the fact that the cost of an air energy storage power station will reduce as the installed capacity grows. The hydroelectric power plant, on the other hand, has to be built near a river or a sizable reservoir. The complexity of building projects is substantially reduced by compressed air energy storage, which may also be used to store energy in abandoned mines, caverns, and other structures in addition to gas storage tanks. Hence, the building pace of air energy storage power stations is faster than that of hydroelectric power stations. Only one of the 40 million cubic meters of salt caverns in Chenghu, China, which number over 170, was used for building, according to the assessment. What future air energy storage power plant, out of the 3 billion, exists? These caverns will continue to be developed by the Chinese engineering team. As a result, China has a vast growth potential for air energy storage power plants. In actuality, China did not invent the technique for compressed air energy storage. Stahl-Level first suggested the technical path of compressed air energy storage in 1949. Studies are being carried out by scientists in virtually every part of the world. In 1978, Germany saw the construction of the world's first commercial compressed air energy storage system. Nevertheless, the idea for such a device was conceived in Hunter Wharf in 1991. The United States of America is home to the world's second air energy storage power plant, which was completed in May 1991 and put into operation at that time. In 2001, Japan was also home to an operating facility for the storage of energy in the form of compressed air. In comparison to other nations, China had a somewhat late start on the development of energy storage systems based on compressed air. Since 2005, China has finally started to operate in the compressed air energy storage industry, after having spent the previous 18 years developing its technological capabilities. Because there is such a large application market for compressed air energy storage technology in China, that country has just begun to use the technology in an official capacity. China will, in accordance with the growth strategy, continue to increase the amount of money it invests in the technical sector. Data suggests that China will construct 100 power plants capable of storing energy in the form of air. By the year 2022, China will have 19 projects for compressed air energy storage power stations that are now in the development stage, with a total installed capacity of 5.38 gigawatts. It is anticipated that China would have built air energy storage power plants with a combined capacity of 6.76 gigawatts by the year 2030. In China, Power plants will be built with an installed capacity of more than 43 gigawatts for the storage of air-based energy. The operational efficiency of compressed air energy storage will continue to be increased in China, and the country plans to reach a maximum efficiency of 70% for power generation from compressed air energy storage. Moreover, the cost of storing energy in compressed air ranges from $150 to $180 in the United States per kilowatt. In addition, the cost will continue to fall in the years to come. China has been making significant efforts to protect the environment, and one of its primary focuses has been on developing novel approaches to make use of renewable energy sources rather than traditional fossil fuels. A large percentage of China's deserts have also had hundreds of millions of trees planted in them, bringing the total amount of green space in China's deserts up to 5.7 million square kilometers. Many people have the belief that these events constitute miracles. Trees in these dry regions may not only slow the wind speed in the region, but they also have the potential to drastically cut carbon dioxide emissions. This is very necessary for China's plan to achieve carbon neutrality by the year 2060. China will make its own efforts while partnering with the rest of the world to sustain the Earth's ecology. Do you believe it is wise to show off your military might to a nation that possesses the deadliest weapons in the world? We are living in the 21st century, and apart from being immoral or intimidating, your country is rather old-fashioned. China boasts the most powerful military in the world, as well as undiscovered hidden weapons. The US still feels the impulse to intimidate China, though. Yet China has developed a means to halt it. In the video we'll be reviewing today, China created a top-secret weapon that has the United States on edge. The top scientists in China created a hypersonic ballistic missile, which will be discussed in this video, is the biggest threat to the United States. We shall also observe how the US will be neutralized as a threat by this new weapon. Even while technology is advancing and there are fewer odds of conflict, it would still be wrong to assume that nations don't require military might. There is still a need for armament that is powerful, hazardous, and potentially fatal. The question is, how did this come to be? And, although most nations do not seek out conflict, there are a few that actively pursue it. Regrettably, the nations with the most power are also the ones who actively seek out conflict. This puts pressure on states who don't desire war but nevertheless want to protect themselves from harm. Nonetheless, such nations still wish to avoid conflict. For defensive purposes alone, the employment of sophisticated weaponry and the establishment of a powerful military is required. For those countries that employ the rule of two strikes, in case you were unaware, we have also produced a video about this topic. You are free to investigate that further. Discussing a second strike plan, on the other hand, encourages a nation to attack straight away in the event that they have already been attacked. China employs a tactic quite similar to this as well. Since the day China was created, they have consistently adhered to this principle. They never start the conflict. But does that imply that China is powerless? Obviously not. Some of the most lethal weapons in the world, which can destroy a nation in a matter of seconds, are in China. A conflict may be ended simply by displaying these weapons, since no nation will dare to oppose them. In the recent years, there have been several headlines claiming that the US is endangering a number of nations. It is well known that the US does this. This has a rather horrible reputation, but the US doesn't seem to care. Even China has been threatened. The US is aware of how well defended China is. But the US possesses excellent weaponry as well. Also, the US is able to threaten other countries because to these weapons. Even though the US has been openly accused of abusing its position, nothing has been halted. China for the US. This circumstance poses a threat. China does not wish to engage in conflict with the US, which has the largest economy in the world. So how can China stop the US from posing a threat to China and from flaunting its military might in China's face? There is an easy solution. China must produce weapons that are invincible to all others. These weapons have to be one of a kind, and the whole process should be kept a secret with the zeal for protecting their nation and the want to shut the US up forever. China began producing weapons. The top experts in China have convened and are working on a weapon to terrorize the Americans. The world has never seen a ballistic missile like this one. It will transform all the missiles out there with its range, power, and strength. China finally launched the YJ-21, the first ultra-fast carrier-based anti-ship missile after spending a long period developing it. Once it is stroked, any missile in the world may intercept it. It can destroy many ships at once with little resistance. The US lacks a reliable anti-hypersonic missile system. If China launches even one hypersonic missile, the United States will be unable to launch a successful response thanks to the incredible speed of the YJ-21. The defenses of the United States are not strong enough to stop it or change its direction. It seems to reason that you would be interested in learning additional specifics about the missile. Let's talk about some of the most important parts of it now. These hypersonic anti-ship missiles are nearly impossible to intercept because of their incredible speed. The missile is going to be used as an anti-ship missile, and its initial targets are going to be any hostile ships that are equipped with defenses. The missile's head is equipped with a double-cone design glider, which contributes to the weapon's ability to maneuver in hypersonic environments with ease. The missile's range is proportional to its power and enables it to navigate any terrain with relative ease while encountering relatively little resistance. The missile's range is greater than that of any other anti-ship missile, making it more mobile than any other missile currently in use. As a result, it doesn't employ any land-based or maritime radar. A space-based data network assists the missile. Satellites are therefore employed to track the target position, and this method is superior to all others. It provides pinpoint precision, allowing you to target any location. With the data-linked information, the satellites make constant adjustments to the trajectory of the missiles. The YJ-21 has a range that is larger than 1,000 kilometers. As a result of the fact that the hit area of this missile is less than 30 meters, there is an extremely little probability that the enemy will be spared. And soon after liftoff, as a direct consequence of this missile, the authorities in the United States were on edge. It was essential that China's missile fleet make use of a cold launch technique, as this helped China save fuel for its fleet. This missile is the epitome of perfection. In addition to being indestructible and immune to the damaging effects of its foes, it is reliable. The Chinese Navy will be unbeatable if its ships are able to carry multiple versions of these missiles at the same time. Also, China is working on the development of ships that are capable of transporting these missiles with ease. It is fair to say that China is making great strides in dramatically improving the capabilities of its fleet. Due to the fact that China is always improving, this will have an effect on the United States. The United States of America is engaging in increasingly brazen competition with China. Yet, whether it comes to chips or technology, the competition is productive. In spite of the dangers involved, it helps both countries continue to make progress. The United States of America also makes efforts to place limitations on China, yet it would appear that China is making progress in every area. At the present day, China also holds jurisdiction over the military. China is now in a position to acknowledge that it is not only capable of competing with the United States, but also of benefiting from them. The United States of America was displeased once the undetectable YJ-21 was completed, since it had been designed as a clandestine weapon. In order for there to be less tension, the United States of America needs to come up with something that is not only more powerful, but also more challenging. China has been working covertly on its armaments for a significant number of years. Technology has advanced to the point that it is now able to turn any concept into a working reality. Yet, because to its engagement in a variety of other problems, the United States would find this to be a very difficult proposition. Do you think that the United States of America will now once again demonstrate its armament in front of China? Will the United States also create weapons of a higher technological level? Do you think there will be an arms race between the two countries, or do you feel that the United States won't be able to create weapons that are more advanced than those produced by China? Have you ever seen a port that is entirely run by machines? If not, you should look into the Chinese port that has called into doubt the technological advancement of the West. While China's rivals may boast about becoming a futuristic nation, China has demonstrated this via its actions rather than words. China's Tianjin port is a working illustration of the country's remarkable technology. And now, we're going to contrast this totally autonomous 5G port with American ports. We'll see in this video how this 5G port has cut costs and labor. We'll also learn why this 5G port will boost commerce with China. China is a significant commercial nation. Every year, it buys and exports items worth billions of dollars. And ports handle the majority of the business. The ports are significant to China's economy. With its incredibly high trading rate, China has long been recognized for creating ports in other nations for commerce. The port must function reliably. Without ports, dependable personnel, and equipment, trade is almost inconceivable. China has built several ports as a result, creating numerous jobs both inside and outside the country. The situation was good before the epidemic. Trade was reduced by the epidemic. The commerce was significantly impacted, however, it did not fully cease. Health risks were the main factor restricting commerce, while other factors also had a role. Yet the employees were one factor that contributed to the decline of China's commerce and economy. Folks were relaxing at their houses, and there were no personnel performing their duties at the ports. Not all of the employees disappeared, but there were undoubtedly fewer of them. China's economy might not have been significantly damaged if these workers had managed to go there unharmed. But now that China has reopened and people have begun to forget the plague, health remains the first issue. China is still taking into account this unfortunate circumstance. And I'm sure that you're reading this, and I'm sure that you're here because you're here. This forecast is also very realistic. China must thus find a strategy to maintain a consistent labor force. What can be done though? How do these employees manage to work under such challenging circumstances? What if the employees were not required to work? China made the decision to swap out the personnel for better ones. Do you have a guess? China made the decision to use AI to replace workers. Every day, the world advances, bringing us closer to artificial intelligence. The prediction that in the future, there will be more machines than people working is not hyperbole. In fact, humans may even be involved in the creation of these machines. China has taken on this effort seriously and has learned from the epidemic to replace the important industries with more trustworthy ones. China made the decision to open up the possibility of having AI and robotics operate in the ports. This concept will not only help China, but it will also serve as a role model for the rest of the globe. Robots can function in any environment, and people may operate them while seated in their houses. Furthermore, even if an accident occurs and the robots are destroyed, it will still be a success since it will save a worker's life. The question is, how will AI and 5G handle the port as a whole? Is it only an idea, or has China taken the necessary steps to make it a reality? In this video, we will respond to all of the questions and concerns you have raised. Huawei is widely regarded as one of the most successful technology conglomerates in China. This time around, it is once again taking the role as the driving force. Shenzhen was chosen as the location for the 5G port that Huawei constructed since it is China's second-largest city. Because robots handle everything in the port, there are no humans to be found there. Now, there are 76 fully autonomous vehicles driving around without human drivers behind the wheel. In contrast to the majority of other ports, this port is able to carry out its operations around the clock with the assistance of these vehicles. During a full day of operation, each vehicle requires 3 drivers, which results in a total of 228 drivers being required for the 76 vehicles. Nonetheless, the issue has been resolved by driverless cars. Millions of dollars have been saved because to this single action, and trade profits have soared. Planning the port timetable was another major source of stress for the personnel in most ports. The schedule is manually created. Every day, a team of individuals sets the timetable, and you can imagine how exhausting it is. Nonetheless, computers are used to schedule events in the Tianjin port. When done by hand, planning the route for a single truck can take up to 12 hours, but a computer can accomplish it in only 10 minutes. The previously time-consuming and intricate process of scheduling now simply takes a few seconds. In addition, machines don't make mistakes, while people's brains do all the time. So the use of 5G technology at ports not only results in time and labor savings, but also reduces the risk of making errors. The port of Tianjin is capable of managing 21 million tons of cargo on an annual basis, making it one of the 10 busiest ports in the world. You should be able to deduce how much labor the 5G saves based on this amount. The loading and unloading of cargo from shipping containers typically requires the employment of more than 800 employees at a typical port. Despite this, the port of Tianjin does not include a single human detention facility. While moving the container from one area to another, computers are utilized to do the heavy lifting. When it was done by individuals, there was an extremely high probability that it would be inaccurate. Accidents were also a common consequence of this, But they are no longer an issue thanks to the introduction of 5G. The port of Tianjin is now the safest port in the world. This port requires around 25% more staff than the average port does. The good news is that this 25% of workers won't be responsible for delivering cargo into a normal port. Rather, they will be performing straightforward duties such as operating computers. While the loading and unloading of 28 containers may take place in 1 hour, the port of Tianjin is now capable of handling 36 containers per hour. This number demonstrates a considerable increase in yearly port capacity per year. The rest of the world is currently looking to this post as a model. 5G and artificial intelligence have never before been combined in a port like this before. When other countries want to boost their commerce and cut their costs, they should look to China as an example to follow. In addition, Huawei intends to expand commercial activity by constructing a new port that will be analogous to the port of Tianjin. Yet, compared to the prison port, this new design will be a significant advancement. It is planned to make use of recent advancements as well as more sophisticated technology. The purpose of China's continued work on these 5G ports is to ensure that they continue to improve with each subsequent project. As soon as China is acknowledged as a nation that is capable of generating the best ports in the world, it will begin manufacturing 5G ports in locations other than within its own boundaries. This will be beneficial to the BRI project in the long run. Every day, China's goals for progressive economic development move one step closer to becoming a reality. Nobody imagined that the pandemic that has curtailed China's exports would push China to develop this port and boost its economy. They are also outcomes that nobody anticipated. We anticipate that China will roll out a significant number of new 5G ports in the not-too-distant future. Do you think that any other countries will follow China's lead and create their own 5G ports? It would indicate that people in the West believe they live in the most technologically sophisticated region. If this is the case, then why hasn't the West developed any 5G ports that are fully automated? Share your thoughts in comments. Also, click on these videos to watch other shocking projects.